development platforms to make it easy to try new things, to try pilots, to get new software that can tie into these things.
All right, and Jack, I'm going to pick up on your point about platforms. One of the big buzz items for this year's CES, of course, is tablets. Apple is going to report some numbers in January, presumably, about blowing the numbers off of iPads. Amazon has been talking about blowing the numbers in terms of Kindle. We've got lots of Android tablets and other devices on the show floor downstairs. These are essentially overwhelmingly consumer market devices. Reading is a big function of that. Kindle and others are bringing apps to these environments for books, and yet they obviously cast a shadow and expectations for the education market and especially the campus market. So given all these platforms, given the movement to digital, what's your timeline when we see a significant presence, if you will, of e-books in the higher education market? Significant in the sense of 20, 25, 30%, not of graduate students, not of business students who are working PDF files in Harvard business cases, but undergraduates in core courses, lower division, biology, econ, intro level, who are working on digital platform with digital content, not necessarily dedicated digital platforms. Bill, I'm sorry, Sean, let me start with you, because this is first and foremost what you do.
Casey, this is right in the sweet spot of what we do. Casey, I guess what I would start out by asking is, how do we define an e-book? And Bill made the comment earlier that an e-book is not necessarily a replica of the print book. E-books are interactive learning products.
It's not just porting print to screen.
Exactly,
okay.
Exactly. And if we define an e-book more broadly to include many of the products that our publishers publish today, things like Cengage Course, things like My Math Lab from Pearson, things that have interactivity in them, things that have assessments in them, things that have the ability for students to get immediate feedback while they're in the environment, and they also have book content in them. Most of these products perhaps started out as books. If we take a broader look at e-books that way, we believe it has significant penetration at this point in time. We know
I'm sorry, but all the data I see about student surveys tell me otherwise, that students are not buying.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that. Let's talk a little bit about that. Student Monitor, their study of median lifestyle,
right.
and they do a fairly rigorous study in the fall and the winter of every year, and it's getting to the point where it's reasonably longitudinal. It's been around for a while. 11% of all students say they've tried an e-book, right? So 11% is not an insignificant number when you talk about it, all right? We see.
And these are full-time undergraduates.
These are full-time undergraduates.
Which is an important caveat in this marketplace, given demography of community colleges and elsewhere. Go ahead.
Yeah, so we're into double-digit numbers
All
right now, and we're still, as Bill I think mentioned earlier, fairly early on into this. Simba information says that e-textbooks will be a $500 million market by 2013, just e-textbooks. And I think when they're talking about that, they're talking about just the print replica e-textbooks. They say digital products, the broader market, will be nearly a $2 billion market by 2013. That's just 2.5, 3 years away.
All right, I'm going to give Felice a chance to jump in on this thing. Go ahead, Felice.
I don't know that it's about an ebook, even if the ebook has a lot of added values in it, a lot of things in it. I think that if anything, our industry has been learning is that you have to change. And I think there is an opportunity, and it's the tact we've been trying to take, where let's look at credible sources of content, and let's open those sources of content to educators, and let them choose what they want, make the tools available so they can create templates of that and integrate it directly into the lesson so that a student, as they're in a learning environment, immersed in an environment, can see the intellectual property of the faculty, which belongs to the faculty, but can click here and bring up a conversation with Tom Friedman, can bring up content from a think tank, can bring up our artifacts from Smithsonian or Flat World or Cengage or Pearson or McGraw or any of the assets, but let's make available for teachers to pick and choose what they want and re-aggregate it.
I'm going to take your question, I'm going to take that to Bill, because Bill, your publishing model is still dependent upon not an ancillary conversation with Tom Friedman or Nobel laureate. It's about putting units in the hands of students, and students, not faculty, are the buyers. And one of the challenges, clearly, in terms of price. You know, the assumption of technology is it will be cheaper, and depending on what metrics you use, new book versus used book, it is or it isn't. When do we begin to get that critical mass about large numbers of undergraduates buying digital econ books as opposed to buying used books?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple questions embedded there. One is around price, Casey. And as we think about price, I mean, there are obviously different ways to measure price, but the way that we think about it is total cost of education, meaning is that student more successful? Are they getting a better experience? Are we seeing greater retention rates, greater persistence? And if you measure the true cost of education, the cost of a dropout, as all of you know, is very, very substantial. To the extent we can apply a lot of what we've talked about around integrated technology and have that student be more engaged, stay in the programs longer, that will lower the total cost of education. That's really what we're focused on as we think about our next generation learning environments.
And Jack, as somebody whose firm brings these platforms to market, you're going to assure us they're going to continually get to be less expensive on the platform side, not necessarily on the content side, right?
Right, absolutely. But you
Okay.
look at, no, it's a follow-on to their point.
All right.
All right. You look at, you said iPad was going to come and blow numbers out. Yeah, absolutely. They're going to sell 10 million, 20 million, but there's 300 million people in the U.S. And, so look at, when you talk about 20% penetration of a market, you need to be very, very low cost to hit that market. And we believe you have to hit, $100 price points where it's not a complete replacement for textbooks, because textbooks are nice. They're paper. You can do things with it. Digital doesn't just replace it and say, oh, just because we can do it digitally, we don't need a paper. It's got to be a supplement. It's got to add additional value on top. And when it does that, it needs to be some product that you would buy in addition to a textbook, right? So if you get to like $100, okay, I'll buy a textbook and this. And that's how you're starting to get technology rolled into, seamlessly in these environments.
All right. I want to take us back to a little bit of the conversation from the last panel and also push some of you beyond your role as content or platform providers. The internet provides, as we know, access to an incredibly rich array of stuff, broadly defined. So the edupunks, the DIYers say grab it and leverage it and mash it up. But the question I think that for many of us is that whether we are teachers or we are employers or we're parents or any one of those things is how do we deal with the issue of content versus certification? Oprah's got a wonderful book club. It's done a wonderful thing in terms of being a catalyst for people to read. And yet I can't go into any one of your offices and put on my resume that I'm a card-carrying member of Oprah's book club and expect you to hire me as an editor. You're looking for other kinds of things beyond the fact of the content I've pulled down from the web. So in this new world of content versus certification, a whole new variety of providers, where are the boundaries? Where are the gray areas? Where are we going with a lot of this? Jack, let me begin with you, because you represent a technical firm. You're looking for certified competence for the folks who are either engineers or in marketing that come to Marvell and say, I can do this. How do you measure that in a world of stuff that's out there in self-proclamation?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. I mean, as a technology provider, we are working with content providers to get that content onto these platforms. And as we talk to different content providers, we see kind of themes emerge, and that's kind of where a lot of our learnings come from. And I think the certification is actually holding back, kind of education as an industry. People are so used to, it has to be standardized, it has to be on this approved thing. If it's not approved, we can't try it, we can't test it. So I think people are afraid to try new things. And I think, you're going to, at some point, people are going to take some risks to do this with people who you may not be able to know, is it certified? But you're going to have to see, do the results work out?
Bill, is Cengage going to hire me on the basis of, I put on my resume, I'm a member of Oprah's book club and I belong to a book circle? I'm sorry?